So tonight, I'm going to be presenting a program that really covers topics that may seem unrelated. People, packrats, and stone. But I hope to convince you that they all are related, because they are keepers of time. And I have a question for you all. I want you to think about, why is history and prehistory and all that, why is the past important to you? And why is the past important to society? How can we learn from the past? So that's the question I'm going to propose to you guys, and we'll go ahead and get started with this little program, People, Packrats, and Stone. And I am Rob Hanawalker. This is my first season at Capitol Reef National Park. As I say, one of my favorite of parks, probably is my favorite of all parks. The scenery, the beauty, the bats flying around, the orchards. I can't stop. There's so many details about this park that are so significant to me. But what is the big reason? Why was this made a national park back in 1971 and back in 1937 a national monument? Why would you make this a national park?
Scenery.
The scenery? Good. A lot of the parks are proposed because of their scenery. But what do you think Congress and the president at the time, Franklin D. Roosevelt, what do you think he was looking at when he made this a national park? What's really significant about this place?
Probably the geology.
Excellent. The geology, that is exactly what it is. It's this really fascinating bend in the earth. We call it a monocline, a technical term. We call it water pocket fold, Capitol Reef. Reef, that word means a barrier to travel. It's more used in a nautical term. A lot of the first explorers that came through here, such as prospectors, had nautical experience. So they thought this land, which is about a 100-mile stretch, was a pretty good barrier to travel, so it would definitely qualify as a reef. And the capital part, where does that come from? Capital with an O, right? With the where does that come from? Any guesses? Okay, I'll tell you. One of the rock formations that we have here, called the Navajo sandstone, when it erodes, it sometimes makes these really nice dome shapes. And I guess one of those domes is especially reminiscent of the Capitol building and its dome. So that's why we get the name Capitol, and then the reef part comes from the fact that it's a barrier to travel. Water pocket fold, because within this rock, that same layer we call the Navajo sandstone, there's water pockets, these pools, natural pools in the water. Something very significant when you're in a desert, right? So there turns out to be 17 different layers of rock in this park. We call them formations. And each layer, and you can see a few of them right here, tell a different story in time. Happy birthday, everybody. Is it anybody's birthday right now? Okay, I guess not. So we're not celebrating a birthday, but we are showing off a delicious geologic cake. I made it myself. But the thing is, we don't want to eat this cake. It's made out of rock. Each layer is a different layer of time. Oh, and this is a geological cake here too.
Huh.
Whoa. Is that the castle? That's right. Good job. It's exactly what it is. It's a formation called the castle. And see how there's different layers? Some of them have different textures and different colors. And as you go up, it just changes and changes. 17 different layers, and we only have about 4 in this picture, okay? So this layer at the bottom, you think it's the oldest of the layers or the youngest layer? Is the one at the top the oldest or the youngest? The top would be the oldest or the youngest?
Oldest.
The oldest?
Uh-huh.
It's the opposite.
Oh.
Okay, I want you to imagine, believe it or not, this place was at or below sea level for hundreds of millions of years. And sediment would be coming in from many sources, sediment from the ancestral Rocky Mountains that no longer exist, brought in by streams, brought in by even oceans, and huge intercontinental sand dune areas. All these different layers of time. But as this sediment is being brought in, it layers from the bottom first, right? And then new layers are put on top of it. Newer, 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 newer. So the further you go up in the layers of rock, the younger the rock becomes. So I'm glad at least you gave it a try. We need more participation in this audience, you guys. If you guys do that, I'm going to have so much more fun, trust me. This bottom layer here, we call it Moenkopi. You're like, who cares? I don't know. But it really doesn't matter what we call it, probably. It's the geologists that really appreciate that name. But what's neat about the Moenkopi, in this picture being the oldest of the rock layers, right? What's neat about it is it tells a story about the Jurassic time period. And then the cliffs up above there talk about the Jurassic time period. And this is kind of what the landscape looks like probably during much of the Jurassic time period in this part of the world. A lot of mud. Seems like there was a lot of sort of intertidal mudflat areas, probably along oceans and delta areas, bringing in a lot of rich, silty mud. And there were animals starting to make the scene. There were these big crocodiles. We still see crocodiles on Earth today, right? Alligators and these huge amphibians that probably were the ancestors of dinosaurs. And some of the first dinosaurs start to make the scene too in the Jurassic time period. So it's a pretty neat time. And that's this bottom layer of rock called Moenkopi. This is what the environment looks like. We find fossils within this rock. We find ripples in this rock, indicating probably slow-moving streams, a lot of mud, but we also find fossils of animals and plants. But in this case, it's not really the remains of an animal. It's what? Can you guys tell in this picture?
Footprint?
Yeah, good. It's a trackway. It's like footprints. But try to imagine this animal that's walking is not really walking, but instead is swimming. And as it's swimming, it's sort of scratching into the bottom of the water, into the bottom of the riverbed, which is mostly mud. And as it does so, silt gradually fills in those spots. And we can see that the animal is moving in one direction, but the actual print is showing sort of a diagonal direction to the direction the animal's going. So we can see that the animal might be fighting a little bit of a current in this water. That's pretty cool. This rock, which probably is like 200 million years old, is telling a story about some creature that we have no idea, we don't really know what it looks like, but it could possibly be one of the ancestors of what became dinosaurs. So pretty neat. And here's what one of these track fossils looks like. Now it's a cast. When the animal brought its foot through the muddy bottom of the river, the silt and sand filled in the spaces. And we're looking at the silt and sand that filled in the spaces. And if you look at the bottom of the track, this is some sort of a flipper with claws, I think, that was dug through the sand here. If you look at the bottom there, you see that dimple? That's actually an eddy. An eddy of current actually pushed that little dimple into the mud as the animal moved its foot across this section of mud. It's kind of neat, I think. 200 million years ago, but yet we can still see action from the past. There's a story kept in time there. Now, let's go to the Jurassic time period. And what's really popular about the Jurassic time period, you guys? Dinosaurs, that's right. The terrible lizards, that's what dinosaur means. And there was probably no more biodiversity. On the entire planet's history, There's never been so much biodiversity probably as the Jurassic and into the late Jurassic time period. There's dinosaurs of all sorts of make and models out there. All sorts of different kinds of insects and plants as well. So right now, can you hear the river? Okay, that would have been a sound of the Jurassic. Do you hear the crickets? Okay, that would have been a sound of the Jurassic. So we're similar in those two regards, but what about these apple trees and cottonwood trees? Were they in the Jurassic? They weren't, nope. They didn't exist yet. Most of the plants that you'd find in the Jurassic time period were cycads, ferns, and maybe back in the background, giant redwoods and sequoias that we still have on Earth today. Not very many of them, but there's a few in California anyway. So a much different landscape. Some of the things the same, but a lot of things quite different. And let's say, since we got all this high-tech fancy stuff here, this new auditorium and PowerPoint presentation, all this is pretty new. Let's say I had a button in here that could send us back to the Jurassic time period. All of us here in the amphitheater. Who wants to go? All right, everybody wants to go to the Jurassic period?
No.
Anybody concerned about going to Jurassic at all? Okay, good. I'm really glad because, well, fortunately, I don't have a button that can send us back to the Jurassic time period. But if I did, we would never be more at risk of being eaten alive. Just imagine us fleshy, delectable animals with no protective scales and hard plates to protect ourselves. We'd be in a lot of trouble. And this animal right here would make quick lunch out of us, Velociraptor. But not all the animals were meat eaters. What do we call meat eaters? What's that technical term?
Carnivore.
Good, it's carnivores. And what do we call animals that eat a lot of plants? Plant eaters? That's right, or herbivores. So in this case, we got this giant animal. There's me, Ranger Rob, standing next to an outline of a giant Parasaurolophus, or just commonly known as the duck-billed dinosaur. I still think I'd be a little nervous if I was standing that close to a giant dinosaur. But at least I would know that it's not wanting to eat me as much as just bludgeon me. It's an herbivore, so it only eats plants, and I'm not a plant, so I'm a little bit safer. Now, looking at this dinosaur, this picture of a dinosaur, we know it looked exactly like that, right? We know that it had red spots on its bum, for example. Is that right? No, we don't. We have no idea what the animal probably looks like because all we have left of this animal is what? A skeleton with bones. Yeah, they're fossilized, made into rock, into stone. That's right. You see that thing on its head? Looks sort of like a big horn or something sticking off of its head. Why do you think it has that horn on its head? Shout it out. You can't be wrong because nobody really knows. Go ahead, shout it out. To protect itself, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, to scratch itself. You know what? I think it's possible. I mean, there's actually a divot in its back for where it scratched itself so much. Yeah, maybe it's to scratch its back. There's a lot of good explanations. I want to hear more.
For style.
For style. Chic. It impresses the girls. Yeah.
Defense.
Defense. Good, good. Any other guesses?
Fighting each other.
Fighting each other. So battle. Kind of like maybe how bighorn sheep kind of clock each other in the head over and over again to find love.
Cooling.
For cooling. I like that too. It's like a radiator system. It's able to cool itself off with this thing on its head. Look at all these different guesses we're coming up with. You guys are scientists. How do you like that? Okay, there's one other hypothesis out there, and this is actually one of the most popular one right now, why this thing has a horn on its head, and I like it a lot. It is a party favor. It makes noise with this thing on its head. It possibly makes a really low pitch frequency noise that can travel a long distance. So think of like maybe whales or elephants. They communicate over miles and miles of distance by using this kind of an amplification system, resonating low-frequency sound. So that's actually one of the neatest ideas out there, I think. Now this is the Cretaceous time period when this duck-billed dinosaur is living on Earth. Things have changed quite a bit in the landscape. To the south and west, there's all these volcanoes exploding, booming, and coughing up ash and toxic dust. And boy, there's so much erosion happening. All this mud and ash-laden silt is coming down in these rivers, and there's not as much vegetation to be had. Okay, and then we've got this herd of duck-billed dinosaurs moving through this terrain, looking for a better place to feed and to make a life. But one of our duck-billed dinosaurs is especially curious. She's never seen anything like this. She's never seen a landscape with all these volcanoes exploding in the distance. She's impressed. She likes it a lot. And she wanders, she saunters a bit, and she sees a nice-looking cycad plant across this slow, muddy stream. And she decides to go ahead and take the plunge and try to cross the stream. She steps in and immediately finds out, oh my gosh, this is really slick stuff. And she slides right into that stream and realizes, oh my gosh, I better get out of here. This is not a safe place to be. Look at her. She's got a duck bill, right? But she's not a duck. She doesn't have big webbed feet like a duck. She's huge. She's got camel-like feet with all this mass sitting on top of those peg legs. So, unfortunately, she doesn't do very well in this muddy silt. And she swings back around and she tries climbing up the bank. She sinks and the bank actually collapses on her. She sinks deeper and deeper. She hoots out to her cohorts, her friend and family out there and the rest of the herd. Nobody comes to help her. I think the reason is nobody can hear her because the volcanoes are too loud. Even though she has a very sophisticated sound resonating device, those volcanoes overwhelm any sound that she produces. And she sinks. The more she struggles, the deeper she sinks. And though the nostrils that she breathes with are near the top of her head, even them become submerged into the water and mud. And she dies. Something actually really amazing happens. Not magically, but microscopically. This mud that she stepped into, this ash-laden mud, is anoxic. That means there's very little or no oxygen found within this mud. That means that decay takes a very, very long time. But eventually, her flesh, her skin, all those things do decay, but the bone sticks around the longest, doesn't it? It's hard. It sticks around so long that minerals such as silica are able to infiltrate her bone and totally replace what her bone is. And in effect, it makes a fossil. Right here is a fossil bone. It's probably a femur, like this. This is to show how big it is. But do you see something going on with this fossil? This fossil femur bone. Looks like somebody might be chiseling away around that bone, doesn't it? Human beings are trying to take that bone for themselves. They don't have permit. They're probably not scientists. I don't know what their reasoning is. But by stealing that bone for themselves, or to sell or whatever, is doing a lot of damage. It's not just stealing from public lands. It's stealing from the public. It's stealing from those who care, those who are interested in learning more about such animals as duck-billed dinosaurs and all the others of the past. So if you find a dinosaur bone, do you take it home with you? Or do you leave it in place and maybe tell a ranger or somebody about it? That's your decision to make, isn't it? Speaking of thieves, though, I want you all to meet a pack rat. All right, and there's a couple of you in the audience. I know for sure pack rats, because I already talked to you. At least I hope you're in the audience. How many here are pack rats? Raise your hand. Oh, good. Okay, that looks like actually that's only 4 or 5. Okay, if the person sitting next to you is a pack rat, raise your hand. Now that's more like it. Good job. Okay, we got a lot of pack rats in the audience, you guys. And what is a pack rat? What is a pack rat? It's a type of rat, okay. But what is the human form, pack rat? Why would you be called a pack rat? Not because you look like a rodent.
Collects a lot of junk or something?
Good, that's right. You collect a lot of junk because you need it a lot, right? Not really, huh? You collect a lot of stuff because it just becomes a habit, and your garage fills up full of stuff. You got stuff stuffed underneath your bed, and just so much stuff. It's overwhelming. Oh my gosh. But guess what? We human beings are not the first animal to do this. There's another animal who's been doing it for tens of thousands of years at least. And we call it the wood rat or pack rat. Neotoma albigula for you scientists. And what kind of things do you think the rodent pack rat likes to collect? Yes? Go ahead, you can't be wrong.
Maybe anything that's on the floor that it could get, like...
Good. She said anything on the floor, anything on the floor that it can get. Oops, battery's dead. I'll be right back. I haven't done the jig yet.
Oh.
All right. Welcome back. Sorry about the delay, folks. Battery problem. Anyway, pack rats, the things they collect, and you were exactly right. Anything they find on the floor. Pack rats have a home range of not much more than 50 meters from their house. We call their houses nest, and their garbage piles, we call those middens, the things they collect. So 50 meters, anything is fair game, pretty much. Spoons. I've heard of stories where they've actually gone into people's houses, because it was within 50 meters of their home. They went into their houses, stole a spoon, and replaced it with like a fishing reel or something. They swap stuff with people, whether you like it or not. Strange behavior, but they really do this apparently. I've heard it from many. But most of the time they just take what they like and they keep it. And the difference between people and pack rats, the rodentia kind, is pack rats like to urinate on the things they love. So if you were a paleontologist visiting Capitol Reef, would you study dinosaur bones, or would you prefer to study fossils preserved in pack rat pee? Okay, raise your hand if you'd rather do pack rat pee. Okay, there's 1, 2. Good. Okay, we got 2. How many just dinosaur bones? All right, on. We got a lot of dinosaur bone lovers out there. Okay, I hope to change your mind, you folks. There's a lot of fascinating stuff you can find in pack rat pee, trust me. Eccentric people are incredibly important, like this man, Kenneth Cole, and you children as well. Kenneth Cole has 2 heads and 5 arms, and he loves to study pack rat middens, the garbage piles preserved by rodents. And look what he does. He chisels away at this pack rat midden over here, dissects it, looks at the debris underneath the microscope to see what's there. What kind of stuff is he finding, you think? Everything, that's right. So,
Arrowheads.
arrowheads, that's right. Human remains. They'll find plant debris. All sorts of neat stuff are in there. This packrat midden, found here at Capitol Reef National Park, up in the Cathedral Valley area, Hartnett Draw area, is over 28,000 years old.
Wow.
That's pretty long time, but what's even more impressive is it was continually occupied for 28,000 years.
Wow.
Some pretty old pack rats, or else it's generation after generation after generation of habitation by these little rodents in this place. And they're collecting all sorts of things about the environment. That's really neat. There probably wasn't any people in this part of the world, and there was rats collecting all sorts of information about the environment, such as what kind of trees were around. In the Grand Canyon, for example, they found out there used to be these big limber pine trees. Oh, today it's mostly desert, so the climate has changed over time. We can learn a lot about our climate. When I first came on duty here in spring, we had a little bit of a rainstorm, but it was enough to saturate some rock walls, and some big chunks of rock fell off of this cliff. Big rock fall. Glad nobody was there to get crushed. But up above the rock wall was packrat middens. These hardened fossil feces and urine and all the debris with it had come down with the rock slide. And this is what a packrat midden looks like. I can see what looks like little turds, I can see grass debris, and I can see rocks. But if you look at them a little bit closer, you can find other stuff, like plants, juniper seeds, and foliage. That's telling a story about today's environment. At Capitol Reef National Park, we have lots of juniper trees, and I think they're beautiful. I love them. But what's this, guys?
Ew.
Ew. It looks kind of gross, huh? It's not that gross. It's actually something we eat, believe it or not. It's a bean. It's like a kidney bean or something. And Native Americans that lived here, we call the Fremont, were growing beans. What other kind of things were the Native Americans growing here before fruta and all this stuff, the prehistoric ones?
Corn and squash.
Corn and squash. And here's some corn. This was all found amongst the packrat debris and midden. Beans and squash, or no, not squash, corn. Jeez. And what's this?
Fabric.
It's fabric, that's right. You don't find fabric like this in nature. Humans made that. So these packrats are collecting things of human interest. I saw this stuff, but I was fascinated. Even though it probably isn't thousands of years old, I still was very interested in the stuff that they collected that might have just been a few tens of years, or maybe just a couple hundred of years. But one of the most significant studies done here at Capitol Reef National Park with packrat middens had found that there was intense overgrazing in the 19th century. The first settlers of this area didn't do a whole lot of agriculture like farming. Orchards and gardens were not very common in this part of Utah. Fruta was quite a difference when it came to that. But most folks were instead taking advantage of livestock and their ability to deal with more arid climates and moving them. But this slide is a little misleading. The first livestock that really had big impacts here in this desert area were sheep. And then gradually it became more and more cattle that were being grazing in this area. And how would we know that grazing had changed the landscape so much? How do we know there was overgrazing in the 19th century? Well, by looking at packrat middens, and we can see what kind of vegetation has been around at that time, by looking at packrat middens, about 5,000 years into the past. It's only been the last couple hundred years where we see the grandest of changes in plants. It really changed a lot. For example, there was much less juniper trees, more pinyon. There were no snake brome weeds and saltbush. They really just didn't exist in that fossil record. Instead, there was more of the big sage and much more of the native grasses. So things have changed quite a bit. And I could say that we probably made some mistakes. We made some mistakes by impacting the land a little bit too much, because it's only hurt ranchers in the long run. Because these plants that we brought in, the cows don't like to eat them anyway. But people are probably a little more obvious than Packrats and Stone as keepers of time, because we talk about history a lot. We learn it in school. We also talk about prehistory, such as in archaeology and these studies. The first people that came to this area about 10,000 years ago, we don't know what they called themselves, but we generally just call them Paleo Indians or Paleo people. And they didn't leave a lot of evidence behind of their existence. But one thing they did leave, a lot of it seems like, is their spear points. The Folsom and other types of spear points that would have existed around 10,000 years ago. There's a few sites in southern Utah where we do find these. But this is the time of the mammoths and many of the big animals that existed here in this part of the world during the end of the last ice age. But then another prehistoric group of people I already talked about already. They had the beans and corn and squash, right? We call them Fremont, named after the river. And they did leave a little bit more about their existence here in this park. Our petroglyph panel, if you want to stop by and see it tomorrow, 3 p.m., you can get a ranger tour of the petroglyph panel. And you'll be looking at rock art that dates back to around 900 to maybe 1100 AD. But this cultural group, we can safely say, has been around from about 700 AD until 1300 AD. They're prehistoric people, so that means they were before written language. They're pre-Columbian. That means they were here before Christopher Columbus. Oh, young man, can I please ask you to stop doing that? The gravel dropping is sort of distracting. Thank you. But you look at this rock art here, and you see something actually is growing inside of the rock, inside of the rock art. What is that?
Fungi.
Sorry?
Fungus.
Yeah, it's like fungus and algae symbionts that we call lichen. And lichen takes a very long time to grow in most cases, and we can safely say, by using that relative judgment, that this is a very old piece of rock art. I don't know what kind of an animal it is. It looks like a horse. I know that horses weren't around probably 700 years ago or before, but it looks like a horse. There's other neat rock art, very distinctive to this Fremont people. I told you the Fremont were named after the Fremont River. These big trees that are right over us are called Fremont cottonwood, also named after the river. But what was the river named after? John C. Fremont? That's right. That's right. He was a real famous explorer. And what's a little ironic about that, or a lot ironic about that, is we named Native American people after this man who is known to have murdered many Native American people. So maybe not the most, not the best name, but the Hopi. They have their own name for these people, as well as the people we've been calling Anasazi or Ancestral Pueblo. The Hopi Native American people call these the Isatsinam. They believe they're their ancestors. So if that's true, the Hopi have been around for like 2,000 years, and they still practice many of their same traditions today. Probably some of the most traditional people in the world, going back on Hopi mesas for at least 1,400 years. Hard to say if these are really their ancestors, but the Hopi seem to say so, and more archaeologists are starting to agree and say, yes, there's a lot of cultural affiliations between these folks here and the Hopi of today. Now this guy, he's the one that came up with the word Fremont, and the reason we call him Fremont is because this, here at Capitol Reef, is the type location. This is where these people were really discovered as being different than the Anasazi or Ancestral Puebloan people that we'd already known so much about here in the Southwest. They had distinctive types of pottery, clay figurines that were not fired, moccasins, and instead of plant fiber sandals. We talked about John C. Fremont just a little bit, but really it's this guy that I like. John Wesley Powell, Major John Wesley Powell, was, as a human being, a very significant keeper of time. He came to this area, which was a blank spot on the map, and he made it. He made it be on the map. He actually was part of the map-making process. He started the USGS, the Geological Survey. He also started the U.S. Department of Ethnography. He saw a lot of the Native American people of the Southwest, such as the Southern Paiute, like this Chief Togu of the Southern Paiute people. He recognized them as being interesting and different, but not in a bad way. And he recognized that the world is going to change for these people very soon, and we need to learn about them as much as possible before it all changes and we lose all that information. The Department of Ethnography has since then made a lot of work to do that. You notice how John Wesley Powell only has one arm? He was an explorer, too. He and a few other hardy souls had actually traveled down the Colorado River, not really knowing what to expect, down through the Grand Canyon. So John Wesley Powell is a pretty impressive person to me in many ways. The National Park Service, it too is people that are keepers of time. You all and myself being here today, even though we've got this faulty microphone and we've got the PowerPoint presentation, we've got all this technology, what we're doing right now is actually a tradition that goes back, well, as far as we know, as far as humankind goes. It's oral tradition. And the information and the meanings that I'm trying to relate to you folks you might interpret it a different way, but that's okay, as long as it provokes thought. And the fact that you guys are learning tonight makes you all part of this keepers of time. The National Park Service has an important mission, which I'll discuss later. But this is what we talked about. We talked about a dinosaur that got stuck in some mud. Some really fascinating rodents that collect things and urinate on them. We talked about ancient Native American people we call Fremont. The Mormons that made this community here of Fruta were pretty amazing people in their own right. Irrigation farmers, large-scale agriculture with especially orchards, pretty neat area. And then it was the Park Service that moved in the 30s, and it was a big community push to make this a national monument. Back in 1937, Franklin D. Roosevelt made it so, the then President of the United States. And it was an act of Congress that made it a national park in 1971. And since 1916, it's been the mission of the National Park Service to preserve and protect places of national heritage. We celebrate our nation's keepers of time, and in effect, we too are all keepers of time. And this is a genuine photograph of a pack rat. If you see one of these, you know a little bit more about its story. But who cares? Is that what you're saying? I hope not. We should care. And the reason we should care is the knowledge of past. It can provide us opportunities for insights into our place in the world. It can guide our decisions in shaping our lives, our society, and environment. And that's why I care. So take nothing but photographs and leave nothing but footprints when you're in a national park. Thank you all for coming tonight.